Coming up next on NewsDepth, the International Crime Court is trying to hold Russia accountable. A magnitude 6.8 earthquake struck Ecuador. A pilot answers your questions about her job. And we learn about the mystery of bats in this week's Spot on Science. NewsDepth is now. For the first time since the invasion of Ukraine began more than a year ago, Russian officials could be facing war crimes charges. Hello everybody, I'm Rick Jackson. Thank you for joining us. A war crime is any act that violates an international law. International law is a set of rules which govern relations between countries, but there is no one organization in charge of upholding these laws. In this case, the International Crime Court is trying to hold Russia accountable for acts done during the invasion of Ukraine. It has issued arrest warrants for Russian President Vladimir Putin and Commissioner for Children's Rights in Russia, Maria Lvova-Belova. Now, one case will focus on Russia's unrelenting attacks on civilian infrastructure, including power stations and water supplies. Deliberately targeting civilian infrastructure is a war crime under international law. The second will focus on how the war has affected children. Ukraine reported that thousands of children have been separated from their parents. Ukrainians have been defending their nation against Russia's brutal invasion for more than a year now. As the war rages on, Ukrainians forced to flee the violence in their homeland are finding safe haven in other countries. That includes a family of 6 who've settled in North Carolina. Megan Dehaney has their story.
When the war started, the Russians entered the city, occupied the city.
Svetlana, pregnant with their 4th child, did not want to leave until the night of March 7th, when bombs started to fall. Their first attempt to leave failed after a bus with other evacuees was shelled. The next attempt got them safely to western Ukraine.
For us, it was a very hard decision because we love our country, we love Ukrainian people, but we also love our kids, and we realize our kids have to be in a safe place.
From there, they followed family through Poland to Germany, then Spain. Friends who had gone ahead to the United States convinced them a trip across the Atlantic would land them in an even safer place.
Why Western North Carolina here?
Because lots of Ukrainians are here.
And that is where Olex and Svetlana met Gloria Sainyo, an employment specialist with Lutheran Services.
There is a large Ukrainian population here already, and through the United for Ukraine program, people already in the States can sign up to be sponsors for folks.
Gloria's agency works with families like this one and their sponsors here in WNC to help them find jobs, learn English, and simply adjust to American life.
We are really impressed with Western North Carolina. We have great teams of volunteers that help in everything from being English language tutors to donating their time and energy. Like, we could not do this without them.
We are very grateful and thankful to people of United States. Every day when we read news, we experience that suffering what people is going through. My only huge request and desire to say to the world, don't give up to help Ukraine. Don't be tired of helping us. We need your help.
Thank you, Megan. Last week in South America, a magnitude 6.8 earthquake struck southern Ecuador. The General Secretariat of Communication of the Presidency of Ecuador tweeted on the official account that at least 15 people have died, 461 people were injured in the quake, and more than 84 houses were destroyed. In the province of El Oro, homes, schools, medical centers, and highways were damaged, leaving people struggling to cope with the aftermath. Reporter Ana Maria Canizares is at the site speaking with residents.
We are in Machala, the capital of El Oro. Several brick-made houses collapsed here, and in some cases, people got trapped. Even one of the city's largest hotels had to be evacuated because it showed evident damage. The government reports hundreds of injured, so the death toll can easily increase.
We don't sleep. We're worried standing guard in the street because we're pretty scared that there are going to be aftershocks.
Thank you, Ana Maria. It's been more than a month after a massive quake that hit Turkey and Syria, but many communities are still trying to make sense of how their future looks. Hard-hit regions like Antakya, Turkey, are facing long roads to recovery. The cultural and religious sites where tourists once flocked are now in ruins. Jomana Karadesh shows us the extent of the loss in Antakya and how some are concerned the city will never regain its rich heritage.
Few are the souls that roam the streets of what's left of Antakya, ancient Antioch where empires once stood, now a decimated ghost town.
The scale of the destruction here is just immense. Damaged and destroyed buildings everywhere you look, and you've got mountains of debris that stretch for miles and miles.
Gone are the streets of the vibrant old city, once lined with boutique hotels, restaurants, and antique shops. One morning, I woke up, my home, my friends, my city, everything I lived is gone, he says. Mother Nature's unforgiving force has wiped out history. Heritage sites spanning centuries and cultures now lying in ruins. Like the 7th century Habib an-Najjar Mosque, one of Anatolia's first. And this 14th century church, once the seat of the Greek Orthodox Patriarchate, reduced to rubble. It's not the first time earthquakes have damaged the church, but never has the future of its people been so uncertain. Antakya was one of the few Turkish cities where Muslims, Christians, and Jews still lived side by side. That may be no more. Its synagogue was barely damaged, and the 500-year-old Torah scrolls rescued. In their Istanbul apartment, the grieving Cenudi family sip a cup of Antioch coffee, a taste of a home they left years ago.
My past is gone. Hopefully the city will be rebuilt and it will recover by time. But there was a certain flair to it, the community, the feeling of diversification and everyone living peacefully together. And I always believed it reflected like Turkey. To be honest, I'm worried that it will fade away.
Thank you, Jomana. Now, back in the U.S., the second largest school district in the U.S. canceled classes last week. There simply weren't enough staff to keep Los Angeles schools running. 30,000 workers went on strike after nearly a year of failed contract negotiations between the schools and the union. A strike is when organized groups of employees refuse to work in an attempt to make their demands be met by their employer. But after a 3-day strike, Los Angeles union workers finally do have a contract they can vote on. Lauren Posen has that story.
After a 3-day strike, an agreement the mayor, the district, and the union call historic and transformative.
It was a sacrifice, 3 days without pay, and the teachers' sacrifice needs to mean something.
Fighting for justice! Fighting for justice!
The union that represents the lowest paid workers in the nation's second largest school district just won a landmark contract, arguing they say that support workers deserve a higher standard of living in one of the nation's most expensive places to live. Here's the breakdown of the tentative deal. A 30% wage increase, exactly what the union wanted. In addition, retroactive pay between $4,000 and $8,000 for many employees, and a $1,000 bonus for everyone who worked during the pandemic. The average annual salary goes from $25,000 to $33,000. Also, 7-hour shifts guaranteed each day for special education assistants. That's up from 6 hours. And fully paid health care benefits for workers and everyone in their family.
This is an agreement that's going to make a lot of superintendents very nervous. And that's a good thing. That is the good kind of trouble we need. Elevate the bar, and in the process, elevate the people.
For 3 years, it's been a contentious battle with the district and union to get to this point. On Wednesday, Mayor Karen Bass stepped in to mediate.
And the fact of the matter is, the majority of SEIU 99 workers don't just work in our schools, they are LAUSD parents as well. And today, for too many hardworking people, working full-time is just too hard to put a roof over their heads and put food on the table.
Union members will now vote on the agreement. And although a deal is on the table, the conversation about better working conditions for its members is just getting started.
Thank you, Lauren. School challenges didn't just stop in California. Michigan's grading system in schools is getting an F. Now they're one step closer to no longer getting any letter grades, A through F. Cody Butler explains what would take its place instead.
Because it's reducing all the work that educators do to support students down to a single letter.
Charlotte Public Schools Superintendent Mandy Stewart is one of many administrators across Michigan hoping to see the A through F accountability system go away. It's one of 2 state accountability standards schools are trying to meet.
when you have two different sets of expectations, trying to meet all of those requirements, because we do want to make sure we're following expectations for law.
The State Department of Education says the A through F system doesn't meet federal standards. The Michigan Accountability Index, which includes data in more specific areas, does.
But it's very complicated. So like I said, me as a mom going through there, I understand if my school is an A, a B, or a C, a D, an F.
Republican Representative Jamie Green says she'd like to see lawmakers come up with a compromise, taking both systems into consideration.
Take time, sort through this, get a system that's actually going to work, that we're not going to then change in 4 years.
Stewart says she hasn't seen parents decide to send their kids to Charlotte because of a letter grade from the state. She says they're looking at different programs in the district instead.
Because they want to know what kind of education they're going to be getting in a district and what their options are, as opposed to a single letter grade.
Thank you, Cody. And that brings us to this week's poll. How do you think students should be graded? Click the poll button on our page to choose between letter grades, percentages, or mastery. For our poll last week, we asked you if states should have the authority to take over a local school, even if that school was underperforming. 70% of you voted no, states can't dictate what a school should do. Just 30% of you said yes, because states have a responsibility to students. Now, last week we also asked you to send in questions you might have about what it's like being a pilot. Airline and commercial pilots fly and navigate airplanes, helicopters, and other aircraft. Pilots have to know math and physics, they have to understand how their aircraft works, have good spatial awareness, and be able to work as part of a team. This career requires a bachelor's degree, flight training, and must meet Federal Aviation Administration or FAA requirements depending on the type of aircraft they fly. The median wage for a commercial pilot in 2021, about $134,000 a year. It has a 6% projected growth for the next 10 years. That's close to the average growth for most careers. For this week's Career Call Out, we meet pilot Gabrielle Harding. She's answering your questions about a career and aviation.
Hello, I am Captain Gabrielle Harding. I am a pilot for United Airlines. I'd like to thank you for sending in your questions. The first question is from Quinn from Incarnate Word Academy in Parma Heights. Why did you choose this career? What points in your life led you to this point? Well, Quinn, I didn't always want to be an airline pilot. When I was younger, I actually wanted to be a doctor. I became interested in space and aviation by attending Space Camp and Space Academy located in Huntsville, Alabama, with my local Girl Scout council. It was there that I wanted to be an astronaut. But when I turned 15, I entered a program with the local chapter of the Detroit Tuskegee Airmen. The program was designed to take inner city children, teach them how to fly an airplane, and also teach them about becoming an airline pilot. It was there that I decided that I wanted to be an airline pilot. The second question is from Alex from Central Intermediate School in Wadsworth wants to know, how do you stay awake while flying? Well, Alex, that is a great question. As we know, pilots need to be well rested anytime they are flying. So if we know that we have to fly at night, we will more than likely take a nap before we have to show to work. There are some airplanes like the Boeing 777 and the Boeing 787 that have long international flights. Those flights can be 12 to 17 hours long. So there is a rest time built in for each pilot, which allows them to go back to the bunk and take a nap. Also, one of the ways that we stay awake is by talking to the person next to us. Did you know that airline pilots don't often fly with the same people? So it's a great time to get to know the person that is next to you by talking to them while you're flying at night. Ellie from William Bruce Elementary in Eaton asks, how long did it take you to get through training and college to be a pilot? It took me 4 years to finish training and university in order to become a pilot. I attended Hampton University, located in Hampton, Virginia. I have a Bachelor of Science degree in flight education. That program, when I graduated, allowed me to have my private pilot's license with my instrument rating, my commercial certificate, as well as my certified flight instructor's license. But if you are interested in aviation, you can start now. When I was a flight instructor, my youngest student was 8 years old. In order to get your private pilot's license and join the ranks of being a pilot, you have to be 16 to solo and 17 in order to get your license. Ethan from Marianne Local and Maria Stein wants to know, how do you have to know what every button does? I went to a place about planes and you can go on them, and there were so many buttons, I couldn't even count all of them. Well, Ethan, there are a lot of buttons and switches in the flight deck. We have buttons on the overhead panel, on the front panel, including the center pedestal. Whenever an airline pilot flies an airplane, they are certified or typed on this aircraft. In order to get your certification, you have to attend training. Training lasts anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks. During this training, you learn everything you need to know about your airplane, from the aircraft systems, from the aircraft's limitations, as well as what all of these buttons and switches do. But I'll let you in on a little secret. All of these buttons and switches are labeled, and some of them are as simple as turning the taxi light on and off. So Ethan, the next time you go into a flight deck, look around and you'll be surprised at how many buttons and switches you know. Thank you everyone for sending in your questions. If you're interested in a career in aviation, you can always go to your local flight school and take a discovery flight. You can also go online and visit the Experimental Aircraft Association's website, EAA.org. And from there, you can learn about the Young Eagles program, which can give you a free introductory lesson.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Great answers to our questions. Now, of course, we know Ohio is home to the International Air and Space Museum and many pioneering women aviators. Ohioans served as women Air Force service pilots, they called them WASP, in World War II. These were experimental military training programs designed to train women to fly military aircraft. In more modern times, Ohio women have participated in NASA space initiatives and flights. Mary tells us now about Ohio's female pilots who've reached new heights. It's in today's Know Ohio.
There is just something in the air in Ohio. Well, this is the birthplace of aviation, so that something is probably an airplane. And the Buckeye State claims many famous aviators, from Eddie Rickenbacker, the famous ace of World War I, to astronaut John Glenn. But today we're going to talk about some true fly girls, women pilots who proved the sky is not the limit. When you think of female pilots, you probably think of Amelia Earhart, but it was an Ohioan, Jerry Mock, who became the first female pilot to fly solo around the world back in 1964. Mock, who developed an interest in flying as a child, flew a single-engine plane dubbed the Spirit of Columbus for 29 days straight. The trip began and ended in Columbus, Ohio, close to where Mock grew up. But even before Mock, Ohio's female pilots were reaching new heights. Many of them found their calling during World War II through an experimental program that trained women to fly military aircrafts. They were called Women Air Force Service Pilots, or WASPs, and many Ohioans filled these positions, like Marie Barrett Marsh, whose passion for flying and desire to serve her country led her to leave her life in Youngstown to train as a WASP in Texas. Another WASP, Jean Hickson of Akron, later became the second woman to break the sound barrier, which she did over Lake Erie. But Hickson wanted to go even higher, so she became part of another experiment, Project Mercury, which tested 13 American women to become the first astronauts, reasoning that women, who are generally smaller and eat less than men, would make the most efficient astronauts. Although Hickson passed every test required and was determined to be the best of the group, NASA decided it would go against the social order of the time to send women into space. Although Hickson never made it to space, she certainly blazed a trail for those who did, like astronauts Nancy Curry and Sunita Williams. And today you can learn all about these high-flying women and so many more I didn't mention at the International Women's Air and Space Museum, located right here in downtown Cleveland.
Thank you, Mary. I've been to that museum, but it's been a while. I guess I should go back. Now, on the other side of Ohio from the museum, the Wright brothers designed the first airplane by studying how birds fly. They discovered that birds maintain their balance by adjusting the tips of their feathers. But bats, completely different story. Scientists are still unclear as to why bats are the only mammals that evolved to fly. Jeff St. Clair dives into their secrets.
What about bats? They're pretty amazing animals, not just because they're the only flying mammal. They're also, ounce for ounce, one of the longest living animals, the size of a mouse. Your average bat can live more than 30 years. That's compared to the 1 or 2 year lifespan of a mouse. How bats evolved the ability to fly remains one of science's greatest mysteries. The oldest bat fossil is more than 50 million years old, and it looks like, well, a bat. Its long fingers formed wings, just like today's flying marvels. Scientists have no record of intermediate animals that, say, went from running around on all fours to having longer and longer fingers. Bats just show up fully functional flyers. And those fingers, they're not like mine or yours. Bat fingers are bendy. They're able to keep the bones flexible throughout their lives by constantly renewing the bendy component of bones called collagen. It may be part of a bat's secret to a long life. Bats are amazing in a lot of other ways too. Their hearing is among the most remarkable in the animal kingdom, providing a vivid view of the world around them, even on the darkest nights, through high-frequency sonar. That's seeing through sound. They also have an amazing immune system. Bats' high-energy lifestyle requires a top-fuel metabolic system that would quickly burn out people or other mammals, but bats are able to fend off many diseases that would kill you or me. One unfortunate fact is that people encroaching on bat habitat has exposed humans to many new diseases, possibly the latest COVID outbreak. Maybe bats' secret to a long life is that they eat bugs every day. Are you ready to try it?
Thanks, Jeff. Wonder if I could grow some bat wings. Well, if you think spiders are cool, you'll want to check this out. But if they give you the creeps, maybe just listen to this next story. This is a newly named species of spider found living in Queensland, Australia. It's a tarantula-like golden trapdoor spider. Scientists named Eupilus dignitas. The females are reddish-brown. They can grow up to 2 inches, according to a study that's out in the journal Arachnology this month. Now, scientists have known about this genus since 2017, but they previously only had female specimens. The new discovery of a male means they can formally name, describe, and seek protection for this species. Now, tarantulas might creep you out. I happen to think they're kind of cool. But let's pretend that you've just discovered a new spider or insect. What do they look like? What name would you give them? Okay, now I want to hear your ideas. Send us your new bugs and their descriptions via our inbox forum online. And I'd love to see some drawings too if you're feeling kind of creative. Now, over the past few years, many of you have told us amazing stories about the new skills you've learned. Some of you have learned, let's say, BMX biking. Some of you learned cubing. Some of you have even performed plays on stage. What's most amazing is that many of you have learned new ways to learn. This year, Miss Lubigil's 5th grade class has been using their new technology skills to learn all about far-off places like the Everglades, and that's earned them this week's A+ award. The Everglades is the largest subtropical wilderness in the United States. It's made of marshes, mangroves, and is home to hundreds of animal species, including Florida panthers, manatees, and the engaged leatherback turtle. We got together with Miss Lugabill's class, and they explained to us that they used Zoom technology to connect with conservationists, rangers, and guides from the Everglades National Park. Ambrosia told us that the Everglades is a very diverse ecosystem. An ecosystem is a community of living things that interact with each other in their physical environment. She told us that there are a wide variety of plants and animals that live there. Addie included that many of the indigenous people who lived there were able to use plants to build shelter, and they were able to find many things to eat. It's not all good news, though. Ray Lynn told us that there are several invasive species in the Everglades causing problems in the ecosystem. An invasive species is an organism that causes ecological or economic harm in a new environment where it's not native. Rashawn explained that a particular concern are Burmese pythons, which have even been known to kill alligators. Now that's a snake I wouldn't want to meet. Byron told us that many of these animals end up in the Everglades because people release their pets when they can't take care of them anymore, or they're accidentally released through natural disasters. These environmental events often cause people to move. Briley wanted all of you to know that it's important that we take care of the environment and that even small things can make a big difference. So this week's A+ award goes to Mrs. Lugabill's class at Liberty Arts Magnet School in Lima, Ohio, for using technology to learn about far-off places and teaching us about invasive species. Now, speaking of invasive species, I know of a certain feline who invaded our offices, Newscat. No, that's actually how she got the job. Just showed up one day and never left. I'm kidding. She does bring us some great animal stories, though. Let's see what she has for us in this week's Petting Zoo. Here, kitty. Oh, I'm sorry. I know, you don't like that. Okay, she's off to work. Check those typing skills. Aha! She found a story about a seal that took themselves out for a day trip exploring Maine. To find out how this explorer finally made it home, click the Petting Zoo button on our website. Thank you, Newscat. I hope that seal had a good time in the city. That's also a good reminder that we must respect wildlife. Seeing a wild animal in your neighborhood or the park or at the beach doesn't mean they want to play with you. They're most likely lost and scared. And that's a wrap for this week's episode. We still have one more episode before our crew heads out for spring break. But remember, we always want to hear from you, and you already know the deal, plenty of ways to stay in touch. You can write to us. 1375 Euclid Avenue is our address. We're in Cleveland, Ohio. Our zip code here is 44115. You can email us at newsdepth@ideastream.org, or you can tweet us. Our handle is @NewsDepthOhio. Plus, you can catch all of our special segments on YouTube. Hit subscribe if you're old enough so you don't miss out on any of our new videos. Thanks for joining us. I'm Rick Jackson. We'll see you right back here next week.
NewsDepth is made possible by a grant from the Martha Holden Jennings Foundation.
Career callouts featured in NewsDepth are funded by the Ohio Broadcast Media Commission.